The message came at 3:47 hours ship time. Admiral Park was sleeping in her quarters aboard the carrier Heaven's Gate when her communication officer woke her. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. In 15 years of service, she had never seen him look afraid. "Admiral," he said, "Nu has gone dark." She was on the bridge within 4 minutes. The crew watched her enter, and she could feel their fear like a physical weight in the air. Nu was not a small outpost. It was a colony world. 300,000 people lived there. Families, children, farmers and teachers and doctors and engineers. Her own cousin had moved there 6 years ago with his wife and 2 daughters. "Show me," she said. The communication officer played the last transmission, a woman's voice, calm at first, then rising in panic. "This is new colony control. We are detecting unknown vessels entering our system. They are not responding to hails. They are not." A burst of static, screaming. Then nothing. "When?" asked. 14 hours ago. We only received it now because of relay delays." 14 hours. In 14 hours anything could happen. Everything could end. "Set course for Nu," she ordered. "Maximum speed." The journey took 11 days. 11 days of silence. 11 days of hoping that the transmission was a mistake, a malfunction, a false alarm. 11 days of knowing, deep in her bones, that it was none of these things. When they arrived, they found nothing. The planet was there. The oceans were there. The mountains and forests and plains were there. But every building was gone. Every road, every vehicle, every farm, every trace of human presence had been removed so completely that it seemed humans had never set foot on this world at all. Captain stood beside her on the observation deck. He was a tall man with a scar across his jaw from a border skirmish 8 years ago. He was also the closest thing she had to a friend. "No bodies," he said quietly. "No," she agreed. "No debris, no wreckage, no burn marks, nothing." "Someone took them," said. "Someone took everything." She ordered a full planetary survey. Her team spent 3 weeks scanning every inch of Nu's surface. They found nothing. No mass graves, no hidden facilities, no evidence of battle or struggle. 300,000 people had simply ceased to exist. When she returned to Earth and presented her findings to the United Council, they listened in horrified silence. When she finished, the council chairman asked the obvious question. Who did this? Had spent the return journey asking herself the same thing. There were 17 species in the Galactic Concord, the alliance that controlled most of known space. Humanity was not a member. They had applied for membership twice and been rejected both times. Too young, the Concord said, too primitive, too violent. But among those 17 species, one had a reputation that made the others uncomfortable. The Dominion had existed for 40,000 years. They were beautiful creatures, tall and graceful, with skin like polished silver and eyes like liquid gold. They were also known for something they called garden management. When they decided a species was a weed, that species disappeared. "I believe it was told the council. "I have no proof, but the method matches their historical pattern, complete removal, no traces, no survivors." The council debated for 6 hours. Some wanted immediate war. Others wanted to file a formal complaint with the Concord. Others wanted to do nothing, to pretend it never happened, to avoid drawing more attention to humanity. In the end, they chose diplomacy. Earth's ambassador to the Concord, a patient man named Shin, was instructed to demand an investigation. The Concord's response came 3 weeks later. It was polite, it was sympathetic, it was utterly useless. "Space is vast and dangerous," the Concord representative said. "Colonies fail, settlers disappear. We have reviewed your evidence and found nothing to suggest involvement by any Concord member. We offer our condolences for your loss." Ambassador Shin reported this to the council with barely controlled fury. "They know," he said. "They all know, and they do not care." Captain was in that meeting. He stood up without permission and spoke without being recognized. "Then we make them care," he said. "We find their worlds. We burn their cities. We show them that humanity is not prey." Admiral Park spoke before anyone else could respond. "Sit down." He stared at her. "Admiral." "Sit down." He sat. "Address the council." "Captain speaks from grief and anger. I understand this. I share it. But if we attack the without proof, the entire Concord will unite against us. We have 12 colony worlds. They have thousands. We have 40 million people beyond Earth. They have trillions. If we start a war today, we will lose." "Then what do you suggest?" the chairman asked. "We find the truth," said. "We gather evidence. We learn exactly what happened and why. And then when we act with purpose." The council approved her plan. Within a week she had assembled a team of intelligence operatives. She chose their leader personally, a young woman named Lee who had spent 10 years analyzing alien communications for Earth's Defense Ministry. Was quiet. She was patient. She noticed things that others missed. "Find me the truth," told her. "I do not care how long it takes." Nodded. She did not promise success. She did not offer comfort. She simply said, "I will do my best, Admiral." As team departed for conquered space, stood alone on the observation deck of Heaven's Gate. She looked out at the stars and thought about her cousin. His name was Park. He was a teacher. He had moved to New because he believed in humanity's future among the stars. He had written her letters about his daughters, about how they loved to watch the sunset over the alien mountains, about how happy they were. Now they were gone, all of them, erased like they had never existed. Did not cry. She had not cried since she was a child, but she made a promise to herself, standing there in the darkness between stars. She would find out who had taken her people. She would learn why. And when she knew the truth, she would make sure that nothing like this ever happened again. Not to humanity. Not to anyone. The stars were cold and distant, and they offered no comfort. But Admiral Park was patient. She had learned patience in 30 years of service. She had learned that the universe did not reward anger or haste. She had learned that the deadliest weapon was not a gun or a missile or a fleet of warships. The deadliest weapon was time. And humanity had plenty of time. She returned to her quarters and began to plan. Outside her window, the stars burned on, indifferent to the small creatures that lived and died beneath their light. They did not know that those small creatures were watching, learning, waiting. They would learn soon enough. 18 months passed like water through sand. Lee moved through conquered space like a ghost, changing her identity, her appearance, her ship. She learned to speak 3 alien languages fluently. She learned their customs, their secrets, their weaknesses. She made friends with people who could never know her real name. She smiled at creatures who might have helped kill her people. And she listened. The conquered was not as united as it appeared. The 17 species distrusted each other almost as much as they distrusted outsiders. They formed alliances and broke them. They traded secrets and lies. They whispered about each other in dark corners of space stations and in encrypted communications they thought no one could crack. Cracked them. Her team was small but brilliant. There was an engineer who could build listening devices from scraps of metal. There was a pilot who could fly through asteroid fields blindfolded. There was a language expert who could read ancient alien texts that had been dead for centuries. Together, they built a network of informants and sources that spread across half the galaxy. In the 14th month, found what she was looking for. It came from a communications hub on a moon at the edge of their territory. One of her informants, a dock worker who owed her a favor, managed to copy a single data file before it was deleted. The file was encrypted with the highest security the possessed. It took Team 3 weeks to break it. When they read what was inside, nobody spoke for a long time. The file was a report from something called the Assessment Division. It described a program that had been running for 200 years, a program designed to evaluate potential threats to dominance. The program had a simple name: Threat Potential Analysis. The report explained how it worked. When they identified a new species that might one day become dangerous, they did not wait for that danger to grow. They tested it. They took a small sample of that species, a colony or a settlement or a ship, and they watched what happened next. If the species responded with immediate violence, they destroyed them completely. A violent response proved the species was dangerous and must be eliminated. If the species did nothing, they continued taking samples until nothing was left. A passive response proved the species was weak and could be harvested without risk. There was no option that led to survival. The test was designed to end only one way. The report listed every species that had been tested in the past 200 years. There were 47 names, 47 species that had lived and built civilizations and dreamed of the stars. All 47 were now extinct. At the bottom of the list, added recently, was a new entry: humans. New was marked as initial sample. The assessment was still ongoing. They were waiting to see how humanity would respond. Stared at the report for a long time. She thought about the 300,000 people who had lived on New. She thought about what sample meant. She thought about the fact that somewhere in some facility humans might still be alive, being studied, being taken apart, being used. She sent an encrypted message to Admiral Park. It contained only 4 words: "I found the truth." 3 weeks later, she stood before the United Council on Earth. The chamber was silent as she spoke. She showed them the report. She explained what it meant. She answered their questions with cold precision, never raising her voice, never showing the rage that burned inside her. When she finished, the council chairman looked like he had aged 20 years. "You are saying," he said slowly, "that we were never meant to survive this." "Correct," said. "They designed this test to justify our destruction no matter what we do. If we fight, they call us aggressors and rally the conquered against us. If we do not fight, they take more colonies until nothing remains. And the conquered knows about this. Some species actively participate, others simply look away. They are afraid of they have seen what happens to species that oppose them." A council member named Doctor stood slowly. She was old, nearly 90, but her mind was sharp as a blade. She had served on the council for 40 years and had seen humanity through 3 interstellar crises. When she spoke, everyone listened. "They expect us to be animals," she said. "Beasts that bite when struck, or sheep that cower when threatened. They have done this 47 times before. They believe they know how every species will respond." "They do know," Captain said bitterly. He had aged in the past 18 months too. The anger in his eyes had not faded, but it had changed. It had become something colder. "Every species responds the same way: fight or flee, attack or submit. There is no other option." "There is always another option," Doctor said quietly. "They have never tested a species like humanity. They do not understand what we are." "What are we?" the chairman asked. Doctor smiled. It was not a warm smile. "We are patient, we are clever, and we remember." She turned to face the full council. "They expect us to make a choice in the next few months: attack or submit. But we will do neither. We will smile and bow and accept their condolences. We will file protests and attend their assemblies and play the role of the weak species they believe us to be." "And while we do this," Admiral Park asked, "while we do this, we prepare. We build weapons they cannot imagine. We plan operations they cannot predict. We become something they have never seen before, a species that chooses when to act, not a species that reacts to provocation." "How long?" the chairman asked. Doctor considered. 3 years, perhaps 4. Long enough to make them believe we have accepted our fate. Long enough to build what we need. Long enough to ensure that when we finally move, we move once and we move forever. The council voted. It was not unanimous. Some members believed the plan was too slow, that more colonies would die while humanity waited. Others believed it was too aggressive, that humanity should truly submit and hope for mercy. But the majority agreed with Dr. Project Ember was approved. As the council dispersed, Captain approached Admiral Park. "Do you believe this will work?" he asked. Looked at him for a long moment. "I believe we have no other choice," she said. "They have played this game 47 times. They believe they know every possible move. They are about to discover that they do not. And if they test us again, if they take another colony while we wait." His face became very still. "Then we will add those names to the list of people we remember. And when the time comes, they will learn exactly how long humanity's memory can be." Outside the council chamber, the sun was setting over Earth's capital city. Millions of people went about their lives, unaware of the decision that had just been made. They worked and loved and raised their children and dreamed small dreams. They did not know that somewhere in the darkness between stars, an ancient species had marked them for extinction. They did not know that their government had just committed them to a course that would change the galaxy forever. But they would learn. In time, everyone would learn. Humanity was no longer waiting to see what would happen. Humanity was beginning to plan. And in the cold calculations of the assessment division, a small notation appeared. Human response, passive acceptance, continue to phase 2. They had no idea how wrong they were. 3 years is a long time to pretend. 3 years is a long time to smile at the creatures who killed your people. 3 years is a long time to watch and wait and do nothing while the galaxy continues to spin around you. But humanity had learned patience long ago. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly ended their species. They had learned that sometimes the only way to win was to lose slowly until your enemy stopped watching. On the surface, nothing changed. Ambassador Shin continued to attend Concord assemblies. He made polite requests for investigation into new. He accepted the Concord's apologies and explanations. He never raised his voice. He never threatened. He was so harmless that the other species began to feel sorry for him. "Poor humans," they said to each other. "They truly believe diplomacy will help them. They do not understand how the galaxy works." They grew bold. In the second year they took another colony, a small settlement called Sunrise on a moon near the border of human space. 8,000 people vanished overnight. Earth filed another protest. The Concord offered another investigation. Nothing was found. In the third year they took a third colony, Frontier Station 7, 12,000 workers and their families, gone without a trace. Ambassador Shin attended the Concord hearing about Frontier Station 7. He listened to the representative express condolences. He thanked them for their sympathy. He asked, very politely, if perhaps the Concord could increase patrols in human space. The representative smiled with all 3 of her mouths. "Of course," she said, "we are always happy to help our younger neighbors." That night Ambassador Shin sent a message to Earth. It read, "They are laughing at us. They believe we are broken." Admiral Park read the message in her office aboard a ship that did not officially exist. The ship was called the Silent Night, and it was the first vessel of the Ghost Fleet. It had been built in the deep black between stars, far from any trade routes or sensor networks. It was invisible to every detection system the Concord possessed. There were 47 ships like it now. By the end of the year, there would be 100. Let them laugh, said to herself. Let them believe. Across human space, in places the Concord never thought to look, preparations continued. Commander oversaw construction of the Ghost Fleet from a hollowed-out asteroid that humans had named the Forge. She was a small woman with gray hair and steady hands. She had designed warships for 30 years. The ships she was building now were unlike anything she had ever created. They are not warships, she told her engineers. Warships are built to fight other ships. These are built for a different purpose." The engineers did not ask what that purpose was. They had learned not to ask questions. They simply built what they were told to build and trusted that someone somewhere knew what they were doing. In another part of the forge, Engineer Han worked on something even stranger. He called it the Stellar Lance. On paper, it looked like a telescope, a very large, very complicated telescope, but it was not designed to look at stars. It was designed to kill them. Han had spent 20 years studying stellar physics. He understood how stars worked better than almost anyone alive. He understood the delicate balance of forces that kept a star burning, the gravity that pressed inward, the fusion that pushed outward. He understood that if you disrupted that balance in exactly the right way, the star would not explode. It would not go supernova. It would simply collapse, falling in on itself like a house of cards. The stellar lance could cause that disruption from light years away. A single pulse of precisely calculated energy, aimed at exactly the right point, and a star would begin to die. The process was slow at first, then faster and faster. Within hours, the star would be gone, replaced by a dense, dark remnant that gave no heat and no light. Any planets orbiting that star would die with it. Han had nightmares about what he was building. He woke up some nights covered in sweat, seeing visions of worlds freezing in the sudden darkness. He knew that what he was creating could kill billions of living beings. But then he thought about new. He thought about Sunrise and Frontier Station 7. He thought about the 320,000 humans who had been taken and studied and disposed of like laboratory animals. And he went back to work. On Earth, a young officer named trained the soldiers who would crew the Ghost Fleet. She was 28 years old, tall and strong, with a face that rarely smiled. She had lost her brother on Nu. He had been a farmer. He had grown vegetables in alien soil and sent pictures home to their mother every week. Now there were no more pictures. Now there was only the memory of a boy who had believed the galaxy was full of wonders waiting to be discovered. Did not train her soldiers to hate the enemy. Hatred was too hot, too uncontrolled. Instead, she trained them to be cold, to be precise, to do what needed to be done without anger and without mercy. "We are not taking revenge," she told them. "Revenge is emotional. Revenge is personal. What we are doing is sending a message that must be so clear, so absolute, that no species in this galaxy will ever think about testing humanity again." Her soldiers listened. They trained. They became something new, warriors who did not fight for glory or conquest or hate, warriors who fought for a single, simple purpose: to make sure it never happened again. By the end of the third year, everything was ready. 100 ships waited in the darkness. 20 stellar lances had been built and tested. 500,000 soldiers had been trained. Admiral Park called a final meeting with her senior officers. They gathered in the command center of the Silent Night, floating in the empty black far from any star. "Intelligence has confirmed the location of the," she said. "It is called Prime, 4 billion inhabitants. It orbits a yellow star very similar to Earth's sun." She paused. The weight of what she was about to say hung in the air. "We have also identified 12 other worlds. These are the worlds of species that actively participated in the Assessment Division program, species that helped design and implement the tests that killed our people." Captain spoke. "How many total?" "Approximately 60 billion inhabitants across all 13 worlds." Silence. Even soldiers trained to be cold felt the weight of that number: 60 billion lives. Commander asked the question everyone was thinking: are we truly going to do this? Admiral Park looked at her for a long moment. "They gave us no choice," she said quietly. "They designed a test with no winning option. They planned to destroy humanity no matter what we did. They have done this to 47 species before us. They will do it to every species that comes after us unless someone stops them." "This will not stop them," said. "This will terrify them." Yes, agreed. It will. And Terror, Commander, is the only language they understand. We tried peace. We tried diplomacy. We tried patience. They answered with extinction. Now we answer with fire. She stood and looked at her officers one by one. In 3 days we move. In 3 days the galaxy learns what humanity is capable of. In 3 days the stars begin to burn. No one spoke. No one argued. They had all lost someone on New or Sunrise or Frontier Station 7. They had all spent 3 years watching the laugh at humanity's weakness. Now the laughter would stop. Outside the ship, the stars burned on, ancient and unchanging. They did not know that some of them had only days left to live. They did not know that the small, quiet species called humanity had finally finished waiting. The storm was coming, and when it arrived, nothing would ever be the same again. The High Council of the Dominion was celebrating. For the first time in 3,000 years, I had been chosen to lead the Galactic Concord. The ceremony was held in the Grand Palace on Prime, a building of crystal and light that had stood for 40,000 years. Every important was there. Admirals and scientists and artists and politicians. 4,000 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered to witness their species' greatest triumph. The new conquered leader, a female named, stood on a platform of floating crystal. Her silver skin glowed with pride. Her golden eyes reflected the light of 1,000 chandeliers. She raised her arms to accept the cheers of her people. Today, she announced, to take our rightful place as the guiding light of this galaxy. For 40,000 years, we have worked to bring order to chaos, to remove the weeds that threaten the garden, to ensure that only the worthy survive. The crowd cheered. They did not notice that outside the crystal walls, the sky had changed color. Chief Astronomer noticed. He was not at the ceremony. He was in his observatory on the other side of the planet, watching the stars as he did every night. When the color of the sun began to shift, he thought his instruments were malfunctioning. He checked them twice, 3 times. Then he ran to his communication terminal. "This is Chief Astronomer," he said, his voice shaking. "I need to speak to the High Council immediately. Something is wrong with the sun." It took precious minutes to get through. Security officers did not want to interrupt the ceremony. When they finally understood the urgency in his voice, it was almost too late. The Grand Palace fell silent as message played over the speakers. "The sun is destabilizing," he said. "Core temperature dropping rapidly. Gravitational fluctuations increasing. I have never seen anything like this. It should be impossible, but it is happening." His golden eyes widened. "What does this mean?" "It means our star is dying. It means we have hours, perhaps less, before total collapse." Panic erupted. 4,000 screamed and pushed toward the exits. In the streets outside, millions more looked up at the sky and saw their sun flickering like a candle in the wind. It had been yellow that morning. Now it was red, then orange, then a deep and terrible purple. Admiral Park's transmission arrived exactly 1 hour before the collapse began. It appeared on every screen on Prime. It interrupted every broadcast, every communication, every entertainment feed. 4 billion saw the face of a human woman with gray hair and steady eyes. "People of the Dominion," she said, "my name is Admiral Park of the Human Defense Force. 3 years ago, your species took a colony called New. 300,000 of my people were removed from that world, studied, disposed of. You called it a test." She paused. Her face showed no anger, no satisfaction, only a terrible cold calm. "You have tested 47 species before us. You designed a test with no winning option. Attack, and you destroy us as aggressors. Submit, and you destroy us as prey. You believed you knew how every species would respond." On the screens, the sun flickered again. The purple light deepened to black. "You were wrong," screamed at her advisors. "Where is this transmission coming from? Destroy the source. Stop this." "We cannot find it," an advisor said. His voice was barely a whisper. "It is coming from everywhere and nowhere. We cannot stop it." Admiral Park continued, "We did not attack when you took new. We did not submit. We waited. We planned. We built weapons you cannot imagine in places you never thought to look, and now we are using them. The weapon we have deployed does not destroy your star. It simply removes the forces that keep it burning. The collapse has already begun. It cannot be stopped. In approximately 93 minutes, your star will become a cold, dark remnant. Your world will freeze. Everything on it will die." The crowd in the Grand Palace had stopped panicking. They stood frozen, watching the screen, listening to the calm voice of their executioner. "But we are not like you," said. "We do not seek to destroy your species entirely. We are giving you this warning so that some of you may escape. Evacuate your world. Save who you can. We will not stop you." She leaned forward slightly. Her eyes seemed to look directly at every watching. "But understand this, we remember every name, every child, every life. New Sunrise, Frontier Station 7, 320,000 humans who trusted that the galaxy was not cruel. You proved them wrong. Now we prove something to you. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. And when humanity finally moves, even the stars are not safe." The transmission ended. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the evacuation began. Ships launched from every port on Prime. Millions of fought for places on transports. Many did not make it. Many more were trampled or killed in the chaos. Admiral Park watched from the bridge of the silent night, far beyond the range of any weapon. Captain stood beside her. 40%, said quietly. "Maybe 45, that is how many will escape." "I know," said. 2 billion dead, maybe more." "I know." Looked at her, "Do you feel anything?" Did not answer for a long time. On the Prime grew darker as its sun continued to collapse. The purple light was almost gone now, replaced by a deep and terrible black. "I feel tired," she finally said. "I feel very, very tired." The sun collapsed 53 minutes later. It did not explode. It simply folded in on itself, crushing down to a dense point of matter that gave no light and no heat. Prime froze in minutes. The oceans became ice. The atmosphere crystallized and fell as snow. Everything that had not escaped died in the cold and the dark. But the dying was not finished. Over the next 72 hours, 12 more stars flickered and failed. 12 more worlds fell into darkness. The species that had helped the test and destroy 47 civilizations found themselves facing the same fate. Some managed to evacuate most of their populations. Others were not so lucky. On one world, the star collapsed so quickly that only a few thousand escaped from a population of 6 billion. The Galactic Concord watched in horror. They sent messages demanding explanation. They sent fleets to find the human weapons. They found nothing. The Ghost Fleet was invisible, untraceable, impossible to fight. Ambassador Shin appeared at the Concord Assembly one final time. The chamber that had once looked at him with pity now looked at him with terror. "Humanity did not want this," he said. His voice was calm. His hands did not shake. "We asked for peace. We asked for justice. We asked only to be left alone. You answered with extinction. You designed a test that no species could survive. You planned to destroy us no matter what we chose." He looked around the chamber. Hundreds of alien eyes stared back at him. "Now you know what happens when humanity runs out of patience. We do not make threats. We do not negotiate. We simply act once and completely, and then we return to our silence." He turned and walked out of the chamber. No one tried to stop him. On the bridge of the silent night, Admiral Park received reports from across the galaxy. 13 stars destroyed. Approximately 18 billion dead. Trillions more homeless, their worlds frozen and dark. She had done this. She had given the orders. She had watched the stars die. "Admiral," Captain said, "we have received confirmation. All targets destroyed. The Ghost Fleet is returning to base." Nodded, she did not celebrate. She did not smile. She simply stood and looked out at the stars, thinking about the weight of what she had done. "It is finished," she said quietly. "May it never need to be done again." Outside, the galaxy continued to spin, but everything had changed. The species that had ruled through fear now understood what real fear felt like. The conquered that had looked away while humanity died now knew the price of that silence. And somewhere in the darkness, 320,000 ghosts finally rested. It was not justice. Justice could not bring them back, but it was something. It was an end and a beginning. 10 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways no one had predicted. The galactic conquered dissolved within the first year. No species wanted to remain allied with others that humanity might judge next. Ancient partnerships broke apart. Trade agreements collapsed. Species that had cooperated for thousands of years now looked at each other with suspicion and fear. Some species fled to the far edges of the galaxy, hoping that distance would protect them from human judgment. Others tried to make peace, sending gifts and apologies and promises of eternal friendship. Humanity accepted the gifts politely, thanked them for the apologies, and said nothing about the future. That silence terrified them more than any threat could have. Earth did not claim territory from the fallen species. They did not take slaves or demand tribute. They did not install governments friendly to human interests. They simply returned to their 12 colony worlds and continued living as they had before. They rebuilt new. New settlers came, building homes where homes had stood before. They named streets after the dead. They planted gardens in memory of children who would never grow up. A monument stood in the center of the largest city, a simple black stone with 300,000 names carved into its surface. Every year on the anniversary of the disappearance, humans across the galaxy stopped whatever they were doing and stood in silence for 1 minute. 1 minute to remember. 1 minute to promise that they would never forget. Ambassador became humanity's representative to the new Galactic Forum, a loose gathering of species that had replaced the conquered. She was young for an ambassador, only 35, with a soft voice and kind eyes. Species who met her expected someone fierce, someone angry, someone who carried the fire that had burned 13 stars. They found something different. Spoke gently. She smiled often. She listened more than she talked. She showed genuine interest in other species' cultures, their art, their music, their dreams for the future. She was, by all appearances, the least threatening person in the galaxy. And yet when she entered a room, conversation stopped. When she made a request, it was granted immediately. When she expressed concern about something, governments changed their policies overnight. No one threatened her, no one dared. In her 10th year as ambassador, a young diplomat from a species called the asked her a question that no one had dared to ask before. "Ambassador," he said, "why did humanity not take more? You had the power to rule this galaxy. You could have demanded anything. Instead, you asked for nothing. Why?" Considered the question for a long moment. "Because we did not want anything," she said finally. "We never wanted power over others. We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We only wanted to live in peace." "Then why did you destroy 13 worlds?" "Because peace requires safety, and safety requires that others know the cost of threatening you." She looked at the young diplomat with something like sadness in her eyes. "We did not enjoy what we did. We do not celebrate it, but it was necessary. Now every species in this galaxy knows what happens when humanity is pushed too far. Now no one will make that mistake again." "But the cost," the diplomat said, 18 billion lives. "Yes," agreed. 18 billion, and we carry that weight every day. Every human who was alive when the stars burned knows what we did. We teach our children about it. We do not hide from it or pretend it was glorious. It was terrible, it was necessary, and it must never happen again." The diplomat did not know what to say. He had expected pride or defiance or perhaps regret. This quiet acceptance of horror was something he had never encountered. Smiled gently. "Go home," she said. "Tell your people what you have learned. Tell them that humanity wants peace. Tell them that we will trade with them, learn from them, share the stars with them. Tell them that we are not monsters." She paused. "But also tell them that we remember. Tell them that we always remember." The diplomat left. He reported exactly what had said. His government made no changes to their policies. They had not planned anything hostile toward humanity, but they made very, very sure that nothing they did could ever be seen as a threat. Doctor lived to see her 103rd birthday. She spent her final years in a small house on Earth, surrounded by gardens and books and the occasional visitor who wanted to hear her stories. She had become something of a legend, the woman who had spoken the words that launched humanity's response. In her last interview, given 3 days before she died, a journalist asked what message humanity had wanted to send by burning the stars. Doctor sat in her chair by the window looking out at the sunset. Her hands were thin and spotted with age. Her voice was barely a whisper, but her mind was still sharp. "No message," she said, "a lesson." "What lesson?" The galaxy believed that patience was weakness, that kindness was submission, that a species who did not bite when struck was a species that could not bite at all. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They learned otherwise. "Do you regret it?" the journalist asked. Doctor thought for a long time. "I regret that it was necessary," she said finally. "I regret that 300,000 of our people had to die before we were allowed to respond. I regret that we live in a galaxy where the only way to be safe is to be terrifying." She paused. Her eyes were distant, looking at something the journalist could not see. "But do I regret the choice we made? No. We did what we had to do. We protected our children and our children's children. We made sure that no species will ever again think they can erase humanity without consequence." "And the 18 billion who died?" Doctor closed her eyes. "I think about them often. I wonder if there were children among them who had done nothing wrong. I wonder if there were people who disagreed with their governments, who wanted peace, who would have been our friends if given the chance." She opened her eyes again. "War does not spare the innocent. It never has. We tried every other option. We begged for peace. We asked for justice. We waited 3 years while they took more of our people. In the end, there was only one choice left." She looked directly at the journalist. "We did not enjoy the teaching, but some lessons must be written in fire, otherwise they are never learned." Doctor died peacefully in her sleep 3 days later. She was buried with full honors. Her grave was simple, a small stone with her name and 2 dates and a single sentence. She remembered. In the centuries that followed, humanity spread across the stars. They built new colonies, made new friends, learned from species that had once feared them. They became known not as conquerors or destroyers, but as quiet neighbors who kept to themselves and asked only to be left alone. But the stories spread too, passed from elder species to younger ones, from parents to children, from the old powers to the new. The stories changed with time, growing larger and stranger, but the core remained the same. Once long ago, a young species was tested. They were supposed to die. Every species before them had died, but they did not. They waited and planned and built weapons that could kill stars. And when they finally moved, they moved once and they moved completely, and 13 suns went dark in 3 days. The stories ended with a warning, spoken in 100 languages across 1,000 worlds. Do not mistake humanity's silence for sleep. Do not mistake their patience for permission. Do not mistake their kindness for weakness. For when they finally move, even the stars are not safe. And somewhere on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, humans went about their lives. They raised their children. They built their homes. They dreamed their dreams. They did not think about the war their ancestors had fought. They did not dwell on the stars that had died. They simply lived, quiet and patient, in a galaxy that had learned to let them be. But they remembered, they always remembered. And in the darkness between stars, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Nothing perhaps, but no one wanted to find out for certain.